So, you guys, you can take out your phones. You have permission during Sunday service to take out your phones and take don't take a picture of it, but use your cameras. I want as much participation in this as possible. It's a QR code, if you know how that works. You can scan it with your camera. You can take a don't take a picture, but a link should pop up and you click on that link. And we can take a few minutes to just fill it out. Have fun. Got the music. Yeah, that's right. I'm prepared. Okay, we can take just a few more minutes, or if anyone's not done. Okay, we can take 10 seconds to wrap up. So, can we get the results pulled up? Oh. Anyway, this is just something I thought would be a nice experiment. Okay. Can you zoom in? Is that possible? Awesome. Okay. So, there's a majority for dogs. Huh? Some people like cats, but most people like dogs. 3-1. Anyway, that's pretty interesting. All right, so we got majority. Well, it's pretty much half and half. I think there's one third deaf, and no new people to the community. Interesting. Okay, it's just information. All right, this was the first deep question. When was the last time you felt unclear with life? Um, is that easy to tell the shade? Yeah. Okay, so I've been unclear with life recently. 38.2%. About a week ago, so kind of finding clarity. 8.8% a month ago. Can you hover over that? The orange. Sorry, a week ago. My bad. And then a month ago was a month ago. Okay, 2.1%. Okay, scroll down. Okay, when was the last time you could talk deeply to someone about a struggle you had? Now this is actually pretty good. Actually, I didn't know what I expected, but it was nice to see that the majority of people actually within this past week had someone they could talk to about meaningful things. But at the same time, there's a pretty overwhelming majority, or more than it should be, right? Where it's been a while since we've last been able to talk to someone deeply or about a struggle we've had. Interesting. Next. I feel I have an understanding the values our community holds. So, right, mostly in the middle. One person's not so confident at all, kind of like weighted over here, but mostly in the middle. Interesting. Okay, coming to Sunday service. So, how does it feel? Dread it? I'm super excited. That's the kind of feeling. And it's just interesting. It's interesting to see just these numbers. Yeah, nice. Good. Well, it's better. It could be better, but all right. It's good to know. I have an idea that would make church more enjoyable. So number one kind of meant like I don't have any ideas, or I might have an idea, but I'm not so confident in sharing it. And number five is completely opposite. Right? So I have an idea and I want to share. So, well, good. Some people are just like, meh, because that's a pretty big question. That's totally understandable. Next. Okay, I have to understand what that means. Oh, it's okay. It's short answer text. That's what it is. So, you don't have to pull it out. I will actually just look at them really quickly. No, it's just responses. Some people wrote, I think, the same answer. Interesting. Yes, that's what that was. And then no. That's what the same answers are. Okay, so some people feel, oh, I'm sorry. I am uncomfortable to share my heart in survey. Well, that's okay. Thank you for your honesty. Unsatisfied with life, so relationships with true love. I'm very satisfied. It's okay for the most part. Some things have been downhill. Is it worth it? I'm like calling people out here, but like no one knows who it is, So only you know who you are. So, yeah. Okay. Nice. Living life to the fullest, because it's important you never know when your last day is. That's very profound. Okay. And then we've had the last question, which I thought would be pretty funny. So, there's one response says, I agree, I love Seiji. It's like, no, he's not. But these emojis say otherwise, to my opinion. Yeah, I love Seiji more than life. It's wow. He's the greatest brother ever. Wow. Is this a trick, Seiji? But I really like the way you give your sermon the respect you have for others. Thank you. Deep. Anyway, I just thought this would be fun. Is this fun? Kind of visualizing the responses to like pretty deep questions? Because these are important things to know as a community, I feel. All right, well, that's it for the sermon, or not the sermon, for the survey. So there's not going to be as much discussion in this time's sermon, so you can look forward to that or not. It's on. Okay. And then it goes this way. All right, so the title for today's sermon is The Absolute Standard for Happiness. I like this word absolute. What do you feel about it? Do you feel good? Absolute. It's pretty absolute. There's no other way to describe it. Complete. Full. Right? It demands your attention. So when I thought about the title for this sermon, it was really, it relates to my life. It relates to all of our lives. We want to be happy, right? This is not something I plan to touch on, but when we showed the video of the kids singing and dancing, and then we were asked to stand, I stood. I'm like, okay, fine. Precious stood, Aunt Gloria stood, and I looked back, and people standing in the back, sure, because they're standing already. And I looked back, and like, no one's standing. And it brought back a memory I had, a lesson where throughout my experience traveling through Hainu with Sammy Uyama and Uncle David Wolfenberger, if you know them, and his wife Aunt Mitsue. He gave several talks around Southeast Asia, and I was so fortunate to be able to join them. And just one of the things that Sammy was really touched by, in the Philippines especially, was innocence. I'll talk about this later. But when did we lose that? Innocence, childlike heart, right? I have a niece and nephew that I live with. They run around naked all the time, screaming and demanding things, demanding love, attention. And it's just so curious to me. Like, yeah, I mean, that song and dance could have been pretty embarrassing. So what? Actually, I felt pretty good just standing there. When did we lose that? It's good to think about. It's not like it's a bad thing, but it's actually so common. And it's really interesting to think about, because Jesus taught us to have the innocence of a child. Your parents too. So it's just, okay. Now that that's out of the way. Okay. But I wanted to say that if happiness was understood the way that we teach it and understand it, it would be a very different world, right? But the way that it's understood and the way that it's practiced in today's society, which we are very much influenced by, then drug addicts would write books and they'd be the most top sellers. They would have the top selling book, right? Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. This is how you achieve happiness. But we all know that's not really the way, right? So I'm here to talk about the absolute standard. The absolute standard. God's standard. Now, this is not based off God's word specifically. I'm just gonna have to admit it. This is based off my experience through experiencing God's love, God's heart, my experience through trying to understand principle and to live it. So, first aspect is control. What does control mean to you? Can I just get some answers really quick? Just what does control mean to you? Does it have a positive connotation? Negative? What does it mean? What does it feel like? What does it mean? Just shout it out. Positive? Okay, positive. Negative? Hey, that's okay. What else?
It depends on how you apply it.
Depends on how it's applied. Okay. Control. All right. So I put a game controller because it has a word in it, and but parents have been such exemplars and been such good examples of what it means to have control over yourself. And we are all familiar with true parents or true fathers, I guess, like because it's in his autobiography directly, but I think true mother practices this completely. Is before I can dominate the universe, I have to dominate myself. And what does that mean? So for me, it goes back to my Alaska experience. So if you were here to listen to my testimony, thank you. But if you weren't, that's okay. I'll share it right now. So my testimony in Alaska basically sums up to this. I have no control over the circumstances that happen to me, or the people around me, or the fish underneath the boat. Okay, so when I was fishing, I would fish for the biggest fish, right? But it doesn't matter what kind of lure I had. It doesn't matter what kind of rod I had or what kind of method I was using to jig or whatever I did. I had, what depth I was going to. As long as I had my line in the water, that's it. That's literally the only thing I actually had any influence on what kind of fish I caught. I either had a chance or I didn't. And so it taught me a big lesson. That there's things I can influence in my life, sure. But to have complete, total control over these aspects of my life, no, not a chance. The only thing I can control is my will to put my line in the water and do something. Anything. Better than sitting on the boat doing nothing. And to enjoy everything. And so this is how it solidified my belief and understanding of what it meant to have control over myself, or the lack of control I have over everything else and what I can do for myself. So, okay. So this applies in a lot of different things. And I was really touched by this series of books called Real Love by Greg Bear. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but it's something that's really impacted my life. And it's something that has changed my perspective on love and on how I deal with my emotions. So I've used this example before, but okay, just imagine that you are very hungry, and you got $2 in your bank account, okay? Or no, not even $2 in your bank account. You don't have a bank account, $2. It's $2 cash just there, okay? And then someone you're close to who has access to $2 takes it, the $2 that you're going to use to buy some bread, okay? They take it. They're like, I need this. And they run away. And you're like, what? Wait, hold on. I'm hungry. What the heck are you doing? Give that back to me. Ah! And you feel angry. Now, it's a very logical conclusion to think, wow, this person did something to make me angry. It's a pretty logical conclusion, right? But imagine just one thing changing, okay? And this is how much money you had. So imagine you have $20 million. Bank account, hundreds of dollars of cash just kind of, neatly organized because you take care of your money. Neatly organized, just, emergency funds, right? I'm kind of hungry. I might go to some place to buy some bread, some pastries. Wow. This person comes, takes $2, say, ha, I'm going to take my, and you're like, do you want more? Can I give you $10, $20? You can have it. So this scenario is like, it shows that it really depends on how much we have, doesn't it? That if we only have $2 to give in our heart, worth of patience or love, then we can become very quick to anger. And it's not necessarily the point that this person made me angry. It's that I just couldn't have enough love to give to get over this inconvenience. The way that real love frames anger is me, me, me. Me, me, me. When you're yelling and screaming at someone and you say, I did this because I love you, try it out and look at the face of that person you're yelling at. Do they like, oh wow, I feel so much love right now? It's probably fear, like, oh my gosh, what did I do to make this person so angry at me? Right? So as much as we intend to express love, and it comes out as anger or like frustration because, if you do this thing, it's bad for you, you don't understand, why are you doing it? It leaves us, even if it's meant to be out of love, there's no true love in anger. Because in love, you'd be understanding, patient. You'd understand that if someone is feeling frustrated, that they just have no money in their bank account, no love money in their bank account. And you have to be the one to be richer in that. So learning how to have control over yourself means to also know how to fill your heart with love, like a lot. I think it's very important to be able to learn how to do that. Now, there's lots of circumstances that happen to people, to us, that can cause us stress. And I just have to say, stress is one of the emotions I don't have a solid grasp on yet. I get stressed out very easily, very quickly. I get overwhelmed. And it's really interesting, but I read about some experiment that a group of scientists did, where they tried to contain an ecosystem and completely contain it in a dome, okay? And they would grow trees and different types of species and wild plants, trying to understand, in a completely isolated environment, how does this ecosystem function? It's a very noble, interesting idea. But before they could even get started with this experiment, the trees started collapsing on themselves from their own weight. It's like, what's going on? And it's so interesting. What they found out is that trees need the stress of the wind to blow them back and forth, to strengthen certain fibers in the trunk and in the branches, and to be able to uphold its own weight. That the stress of the environment, of the wind blowing hard or blowing soft in different multiple directions, increases the strength and the resiliency of the trees. Who knew, right? Interesting. And that's the importance of stress, because without that, we'd collapse. We would literally die without stress. Because if you didn't stress about anything, zero, what would you do? You'd be a potato, right? Our early ancestors, wouldn't hunt for food because we're stressed, we're hungry. We wouldn't survive without stress. Now, the type of stress that we're experiencing today is very different from the type of stress that we've had to experience, millennia ago, right? But without this stress, we can't increase our resiliency. If you were to ask me how to create a more resilient person, how to create a more patient person, what would you do? You would put this person through stressful experiences, through experiences that would make them more patient, right? So I had an experience on GPA where I was astounded by my growth in patience. I'd love to share it with you. So as I said, I'm someone who is very weak in stress, right? I get stressed out and I get overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I freak out. I'm like, So on GPA, we have a support system, and we report things to people that are in a higher position than us are commanders. I was a captain at the time. And it was, so we spent the morning in a motel, and one of my members had to be dropped off at a train station that morning. And so upon waking and getting ready, I, as a captain, would check on the car, just make sure everything's okay. And I found a flat tire. I'd run over a nail that slowly leaked our tire overnight. Now, I was under a really stressful circumstance because I had to drop off a member to a train he couldn't be late to. Because it's once a day, and he was expected to be there. I was like, but in that moment, and through all the experiences that I had, leading up to this moment, so one is just earlier that summer, I learned that spare tires need to be refilled periodically. It's important. They slowly leak, and if you leave them there, there's no chance for them to just hold the air for as long as they're just sitting there, right? And then even earlier that summer, I learned how to change a tire. So what I was very surprised by was that immediately I took action. I wasn't just, what do I do? Call my commander, my support figure. Flat tire, member, drop off, help, But I just got straight to work. So for all the members, because I couldn't just have them in my hair, they were going to be like, oh, Hyung, Seiji, how do I help you? It's like, no, get out of here. You're not helping me. Changing a tire is usually a one-man job. There's only so much you can do to help, right? So I'm like, okay, DP study. You study your divine principles. And before I even thought to change the tire, I checked the spare. Oh, the spare is flat, because this car is old as heck. So I found the nearest tire, air pressure filler, and I rolled a tire there, rolled the spare and filled it up, came back, and then replaced the tire, and everything was done very fast. And then I got the tire, our original tire, fixed immediately. So thank you. Yeah, changing tires, masculine. But the idea behind that was I was so surprised, because after everything was done, wow, I freaked out, but it was good. I wasn't just sitting around stressed and worried. I did something about it. And that is so important, because the way that we handle it, like Uncle Ivan said, is very important. Because if we stress, we lose control if we don't do anything. We lose control over our mental aspects and everything that's going on, it's overwhelming. And we let the situation take over us, we've lost control of everything we have control over, which is ourselves. And it's important to grow this resiliency, because sometimes, especially in this day and age, I have found myself so stressed out for no reason at all, apparently. But then as soon as I was able to talk about it with someone, do something about it, as simple as talking to someone, everything just kind of cleared up. And it's this is what I got to do. And then I do it, and I feel better. So that's what I learned, is that in times of challenge, stress can be such a great motivator. And if I let it hinder me, then of course it's going to be overpowering, because I'm letting it hinder me. And growing that strength is very important. Next thing I learned about control is awareness precedes change. Okay, so being aware comes first before you can make a change. So if you're just stressing out and you're not even aware of the fact of how stressed you are, it's very difficult to handle the problem, doesn't it? Okay, I can talk. So I'm just going to go through my points, but essentially being aware that we don't control other people. We have no control over another person at all, whatsoever. You can try, you'll be disappointed. You can try again, and guess what? You'll be disappointed, because you cannot control people. I've seen the worst relationships come out when someone tries to control a group of people or someone else. And it can be so, it can be very direct. Like, you need to change this about yourself because you're incompetent and you're selfish. How is that going to, that person's going to be like, like, I don't know, whoa, intimidating, okay? But it could also be the way that we handle ourselves and how, oh, I want this person to like me, so I'm gonna do this and this so that this person like me. I mean, you can have influence, like I said earlier, but you can't have complete and total control over another person, period. You can only control yourself. And so being aware of that actually takes so much load off you. Controlling another person is probably the most exhausting thing you can ever do in your life. Again, I live with a niece and a nephew, and it's just parents being parents. You need to do this. Can you please stop that? Please stop it. Stop it. Okay? Like, children need to learn and have discipline, but at the same time, they're their own individual being who needs love. And as much as you want to control them, you can't. Right? You can show them how the world works with love and peace, but you can't control them. Anyway, so that's just, yeah. The question is, how well can I be aware of myself? It won't do any good to judge others, all right, of other people's shortcomings, because that's none of your business, because you have no control over that. It's none of your business about someone else's shortcomings. Only your own. And we need to have self-awareness to be able to change into the person we want to be. But there's no use being negative about it. It's, oh man, I suck. Oh man, this is hard. It's too hard and I suck. It's like, well, that's actually pretty arrogant, I've learned for myself. It's like, huh? Putting yourself down as arrogant? Yeah, because in a way, you're just like, I'm so special. I'm so special that no one can help me. Interesting, isn't it? But you're not that special because you're loved completely and uniquely. Unique and special is very different in the way that I understand it. Okay? And it's really interesting. And another important thing about control is thinking in the long term, right? I mentioned this earlier, but if we were to ask by today's society standards to write a book about happiness, a lot of the books would probably be about pleasure, And it's like, oh, well, I do this because it's pleasurable. And actually, I've learned that's a very bad reason, because that's the reason coke addicts use. Because I find pleasure in it. It's just not a good reason. It's not a bad reason, but it's not a good one. You understand? You shouldn't base your foundation on why you do something solely because it's pleasurable. Because if it's pleasurable, it's so short term. There's a huge difference between pleasure and happiness. Okay, next. My gosh, I can talk, so dang. It's already been 30 minutes. All right, next point is purpose. What is the purpose of life? This slide is from a DP lecture I did a year ago, and I just like it so much because it's so beautiful. It's the purpose of creation. Okay. So on all that about control and change, I understand that a lot of us during our day-to-day lives, that there's no necessary huge motivation or desire to change. Everything's fine now. I'm totally okay with who I am. And we're shown like, oh, it's good to be positive about yourself. It's good to be happy with who you are, where you're at. And that's true to a degree. But if you stay there, you're not going to grow and you're not going to anyway, growth is a huge aspect of happiness, I believe. There's no point in trying to change if I'm not clear with my purpose. And in my experience, a lot of times I've lost sight of my purpose. And it's been like dragging my feet, doing my obligations with no joy. And life becomes pretty sad. So, God's purpose of creation. What is God's purpose of creation? What do you think? What do you know? What can you say? What is God's purpose of creation? Joy. Joy. Through what? Come on, it's okay.
Joy through the love of Satan. Joy through.
You got it.
The action of living for the sake of others.
Okay, so what does living for the sake of others do? Because it just brings us kind of in a circle. That's okay. Multiply your joy. How? Giving. What does giving do? Happiness. Okay, so I was actually stuck in this loop preparing for this. I was like, what does this mean? Okay, so exactly what you guys said, but in different words, is love is a means to happiness. God created for the sake of joy through the give and take of relationship, of love in relationship, by practicing living for the sake of others. That's just the wording that I probably manipulated a little bit to like kind of circle around, but the point is, love is a means to happiness. Love in it by itself is not just happiness, because love can be manipulated and skewed, as we all know. So true love is a means to happiness, and how we use it, just like how we use stress, can either make us more and more fulfilled, or can really take away and destroy lives. Because love is very powerful. Love is powerful. And as we grow our love, we find greater happiness. What does that mean? So the principle explains this as the growth period. Did I have that? I forgot. Hold on. Okay. Yes! I did it. Okay, so the growth period. So right, we have formation stage, growth stage, and completion stage. We're all aware of this. We all know this. Okay? So basically, as human beings, as just the progress of everything in this world, everything needs to grow to reach maturity. And so when we start off as little babies, we grow. Our bodies grow automatically. Everything else in creation grows pretty automatically. But the thing about human beings is that our spirit takes effort to grow. I think I have a slide like that. No, I don't. That's the next point. Shoot. Come on. Shoot. Come on. Oh, that's the wrong way. Okay. Gosh. This thing is, after all the times I've seen this, it's pretty unreliable. Okay. So with human beings, it's principle plus human responsibility, stress, growing our ability to love. And so this human responsibility was that next point. So 4 realms of heart. Okay? And the way that I understand that, and understanding our own purpose, because having our own purpose is what makes us unique, and how we can express our unique expression of God. Okay, so, thank you. I did not press the button. I freaked out a little bit, but we're good. So, the growing process of heart, okay? So what do you expect from a child? Nothing. Because if you expect something from a child, you'll be disappointed. You'll be stressed. In more ways, in more unnecessary ways than productive ways, right? So in a child's realm of heart, as a child, what should we learn how to do? If nothing is expected from you. Receive love. Learn how to feel unconditional love for yourself. Because children are narcissistic little butts. No, seriously. Their whole world is me. I remember my little fantasies as a kid, like one of them. It was like I had this divine power. As a 4-year-old, this is what I believed. But in a sense that Children are just narcissistic little butts. But you have to nurture that. Because that narcissistic little butt, okay, I'll stop that. But that whole point is that if their ability to receive love isn't developed, then because they're narcissistic and their whole world is centered on themselves, when they're not able to receive love, who do they blame? Themselves. We see this in like people who've experienced like traumatic, even like experiences that like lack of experiences, I guess, like traumatic lack of experience. And a lot of people, there's like, I wasn't able to receive love from my parents. And through that, like I developed this whole thing, and they grow up with this huge hole in their heart. That's not, that in and on itself isn't like an experience. It's a lack of an experience, which can be traumatic. Okay? Because if a child is like, so worldly centered, it's like, my parents, they had their limitations. Like they're not going to be that understanding because they're children and they can only think about themselves. It's, I must be unlovable. And that's where like the core is. Okay? So our responsibility as children, and a lot of times this is where we lose our innocence as children, because we're not able to, we're not worthy of love. That's the type of message we receive from this really difficult world. Okay? So our responsibility as children, now do you ever stop being a child? Okay. Right? And then if not, if like, you're really old, well, you have God, right? You're God's child. And that never changes. Okay? Next is siblings realm of heart. So, right? Children's heart grows and becomes more aware of other people. Next, then what? Then we have siblings. Siblings, what is this responsibility of this position? To share. Okay? To share love, right? To share love with other people, to learn how to give and take. Okay? So learning to receive as child, receiving and giving as a sibling, then as a spouse, what is the responsibility of a spouse? I'm not married, so I don't know. Can you tell me? Through experience, right? From my understanding, it's like a deeper experience of this siblings realm of heart. And becoming one, exclusive. Ooh, nice. See, I don't know that because I'm not married. Okay, next we have parents. Now I'm an uncle, so I can only understand this to like the gap between my fingers. All right, but understanding the parents' heart was the responsibility of parents to care and love for their children. And it's if you see through this diagram, this circle doesn't leave, right? I mentioned earlier, but we're not children anymore. We don't stop becoming siblings. Well, unfortunately, divorce happens. But, spouses realm apart, right? Like, eventually we want to strive to make this permanent. And then once we're a parent, you can't let go of that position. So once you experience this expansion, you're still here. You still have this, and you still have that, and you still have that. You never leave any of these positions. And it develops into one thing, okay? We find ourselves jumping between stages, right? Oh, I need to be like a child right now. I need to use this swing because this is so joyful, right? We need to learn how to dance, learn how to sing, learn how to enjoy life like that, even in this position, even in this position. Because if you had this position without this position, there's no way you can actually be a good parent, right? Okay. Anyway, my main point here is that the purpose, I found that when I get stuck with finding my purpose, I've realized that I've lost where I am in this position. Like, I'm not thinking about, I'm a child, or I need to fill myself up with love right now, or I need to learn how to give. It becomes like, what's my purpose of life? What am I supposed to accomplish in my life? But really, if you go into this, the family is a building block of society. That's what we teach. And so if you lose sight of that, then of course you can't live for the world as a non-functioning member of a family. Okay, so that's what I learned, is that I need to be aware of what position I'm in. So I'm not quite there, working on it. I'm not there yet, but I'm here, you know? How can I be a better older brother? How can I be a better younger brother? How can I be a better child? And learning how my purpose can actually be encompassed in this, then naturally I'll understand that as I grow my heart, my purpose will grow also. But it's so important to understand that this is the foundation, that we cannot skip steps. That's what I've learned. And then also with this, do you know this diagram is Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It's very, I love this aspect of psychology. But basically it's, as certain needs are met, we're able to level up. And the 4 great realms of heart is just the principal take on essentially this concept. Okay, so we have physiological needs like breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, so like, and pooping, okay? When these needs are met, and it's not like a 100% we have to accomplish, you know, we have to be, and then stuff ourselves, and then do everything here, you know, to move on to the next step, right? It's not 100 give or take, or what's the word? Anyway, okay? Then we can move on to safety, security of body, of employment, of resources, of morality, of the family, of health, of property. When these needs are sufficiently met, then we can find love and belonging, friendship, family, sexual intimacy, then esteem, so self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others, self-actualization, actualization, morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts. So that's like being like whole, right? But this can only be achieved if on the foundation of these things. And then sometimes you jump around, sometimes you're hungry and you have to go back here, right? But you don't necessarily let go of all the other points. But the point is that it shows that as our needs are fulfilled, our purpose grows deeper. So on the terms of like life or on the terms of love too. Okay. All right. Next is purity. And I think this is one of the biggest aspects that I was touched on when I was working with High Noon. Purity. The way we understand purity now. Okay, who do you think I'm talking to right now? Everyone? Sure. Okay. Yes and no. So, I'm talking to the second gen, mainly to educate, because I think everyone should adopt this idea. I'm talking to first generation because I need to educate in a slightly different way on how we need to also educate other people. Because sometimes the way that we teach purity is, no, you can't do that. No, don't do that, it's bad for you. No, stop. Okay? That's often how I've been taught purity. It's like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do that. And it's like, gosh, what am I? You know, what do I do? Okay? And purity is like an egg in this sense. It's something we're given, we're holding, and if we drop it, if we make a mistake, if we do one of those no-nos, broken, gone. We lost our purity. It's over. That's the idea I had. Whoa, that's pretty scary, right? Better hold on to this egg. But the idea that High Noon tries to implement is being clear on what to do. Okay? More than what not to do. So, right, on the previous points, how to build healthy habits, how to create healthy relationships. Wow, imagine the type of person who could focus on this rather than focusing on what not to do. How to embody heavenly sexuality. We're a church that's pretty like sexual in terms of education, right? The fall had to do with sex. These certain aspects of society is like sex, right? This society is pretty sexual, but the idea behind the difference between how we want to embody sexuality and how we understand sexuality versus, right, like the rest of society is very different. Because usually sex is trained with a lot of shame, and we've been influenced by that, unfortunately, okay? It's very difficult to talk about. It's kind of uncomfortable, okay? But probably as soon as I said sexual, everyone's went, at least their mental image just went like, But because we've been influenced by the fact that sex is shameful. And that's very dangerous. Because God designed sex to be very beautiful, intimate, exclusive, okay? And how we practice that in our daily lives becomes heavenly sexuality as a single person, right? And then as a couple, and then as a parent. It develops. But we need to learn how to educate these points. Like the first time I was actually educated on these points was through High Noon in high school, pretty late, I think. Anyway, what to do? So, how to embody heavenly sexuality. So that's not a point that I can talk about at this time because I'm so out of time. Next, can you just help me out? Okay. Wow, this did not fit. How to trust. So learning how to trust. Okay, and this comes to the point of innocence. I think I want to talk more about it. That's okay. How to trust. I'll talk about it. Okay, so when a child is playing on a playground and there's no sense of doubt, usually what they'll do is they'll come to the edge, they'll make eye contact with daddy, and they'll go like, and dad's rushing over like, oh, shoot, right? Complete faith. Dad's gonna catch me. Nearly gives the parents a heart attack. But that's like the kind of innocence that we need. And I talked a little bit about that. So I don't need to go into much more. But learning how to trust again. Because really, trust is a foundation of innocence. Because if I were to boil it down and go back to that earlier, where the kids were dancing, it was just me and everyone else was sitting, like, what was there to lose in that moment? And it's like, maybe I don't really trust the people around me to look at me seriously if I do this. Maybe, and it's the point of like, if you had the trust that everyone was going to love you unconditionally no matter what, and you start dancing. Be joyful. It's very interesting. But learning how to trust actually is a deep point because a lot of times we've been betrayed. Right? We try something that we would expect to be accepted from, and then we try it, and then we get rejected in some way. So, anyway, purity should not be an egg. It's not be focused on something we should do, but purity is like a battery, something we charge, something we build, it's something we develop as we grow. Sometimes it can go down. Sometimes we get drained. And purity isn't just like, right? I could throw away this concept. Purity is not just like abstaining from sex or, not watching porn, right? Or abstaining from those things. It's not just that. Now, sure, that's very important, but it's not just that, okay? Because the thing about human beings is that we can go this way, we can go that way. But the thing is that it's not about avoiding disaster. It's about co-creating fulfillment with God, okay? So this is the whole concept of restoration that we need to understand, that we need to be restored to our original value. Our original value, where we can understand it deeply with God. God wants to be a part of that. God wants to be a part of our lives. So finding purpose, having control of our lives, all leads to really finding the value in our lives to achieve our original value. Oh, this is cool. So who knows what kintsugi is? It's a Japanese art form. Yeah, very, very cool. Doesn't this look cool? So basically the piece of pottery is broken intentionally, and then it's repaired using precious metals like gold, silver, okay? And it highlights the imperfections, the impurities. And it's something that is
yeah, you see it's broken, but it's like kind of really cool and beautiful. Okay? Sometimes we may feel like this, where it's just solid gold. But the whole point is that we want to be restored, right, and fixed. And these mistakes or the things that we've experienced in our life will be a part of us. And we can either be like, yeah, this is who I am, and I'm going to make it so that I can like live my fullest, even with these things on me, and even highlight them to learn how to increase my ability to love. And then the people who come after me don't have to experience these kinds of things. Okay? That's, to me, what the absolute standard of happiness is. It's building a life together with God, understanding purity, understanding purpose and our position in the family or in relationships, and to have the control and awareness to make a change. Okay? And a lot of times we get caught up in life, like the things that really that matter so little. Okay? A lot of times we're promised happiness by this one product or by this experience. We're promised like happiness. But in the end, we're given pleasure maybe, and then we're left empty because pleasure is not happiness. Not in the long term, okay? So there's a quote from The Subtle Art of Not Giving a and it talks about where to not look for happiness. So it's not like verbatim, but it's just a takeaway that I had. So it goes, it's nice to believe that there's some type of ultimate happiness that can be achieved through a perfect job or perfect spouse, perfect car, whatever. But the perfect job will create extra stress, as all jobs do. All couples argue, and the dream car you buy will be the one you end up repairing. It's impossible to feel happy and fulfilled all the time. Everybody wants it, and nobody has it. So that's the point from this book. It's like so true, man. I was like, wow, that's such a good one. Because in the end, we try to find fulfillment in these temporary and, in the long run, pretty meaningless things. But if we go through experiences of stress and learn how to grow from them, then it becomes very long term. Learning how to grow your ability to love so that you can love your brother or sister as how God loves them, how to love yourself as God loves you, it becomes so foundational in the long-term experience, eternity of knowing love. So from like Ocean Challenge earlier this summer, from like traveling from High Noon last year in Southeast Asia to like my experience in CARP and really my transformative experience in GPA, like where it all started, where I've wanted to learn how to like learn about these things and practice it, is that I learned that life has so much more to offer than I realized. I learned that responsibility starts with being aware of my beliefs. Do these beliefs help me? Or do these beliefs not help me? It's very important because sometimes we hold beliefs that completely stop us from doing anything. Yeah, so to overcome and be aware of my biases and my fears. Yeah, and just learning that purpose comes from where we stand in our relationships. You know, where my position is as a child or as a sibling or as a spouse, as a parent, as a grandparent. It's like parent times 2, right? Anyway, I'm very grateful because through all these experiences, like I may feel lost from time to time, but I know exactly what to do to get myself back on my feet. And I think is exactly what God needs us to do. Sometimes things can be so overwhelming. But knowing what we need to do, understanding that we have a support system, people who love us, like God wants to work through that to make ourselves the best to make our lives the best they can be, and to be a part of that. God wants to be a part of that. Aju. Okay, please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Parent and our true parents, this community is so precious because in a lot of ways, there may be things we understand that other people don't. That we've gone through a lot of challenges and hardships. And we're going through one right now with Japan and the situation in Japan. But your parents have always taught us to hold our head up high, to be proud of who we are. When the media called us Moonies to discriminate us, we embrace that term. It's funny thinking about that. The Moonies calling themselves Moonies, interesting, right? So fun. And your parents have shown us so much in terms of how to handle difficult situations. Sometimes they can be way too much to bear. But we hope that we can maybe understand just a little bit more what it's like to be loved unconditionally by you and by those who want to practice it. So, we will fail. We will fail to love unconditionally. But that doesn't stop us, because we want to achieve this world where people can live a life full of love, full of life, and full of joy and happiness. So thank you so much, God, for this community, for using me as a vessel to share my testimony and where I've been in my life to learn these points that are so valuable to me, the things that I want to be valuable to me. So I pray that we can live in the long term, thinking more than just right in the moment where it's scary, but knowing how these things right now in this moment can help benefit me for years and years and years to come. To learn how to love more deeply than we've ever loved before. I pray in my name, Seiji Lindstrom, Aju.